What's going on, everyone out there in the booktube land and the YouTube land? The point of this video is I want to talk about my reading of Crime and Poetry by Amanda Flower. This is the first book in her A Magical Bookshop Mystery series, alright? This book is this series is actually pretty popular as of late from my understanding. Many people are reading it. It consists of 4 books as of right now. The latest 2 are in hardback, so that shows, like, to me, they sell pretty well. And I've seen people speak about it, especially Bree Hill. I'll put a link to her channel down below, but y'all know who Bree Hill is. And I also was recommended this series, or it was brought to light to me from a viewer who recommended it. I finally read the book, and I have to say that, yeah. So about this book, yeah. So Crime and Poetry is about this woman named Violet in her late 20s, early 30s, who is a English professor. I think she's like an English professor. She just recently earned her master's, and now she's going after a PhD, like transcendentalist literature or something like that. It was something really interesting and stuff. But anyway, her name is Violet. And so at the beginning of the book, off stage, she is residing in Chicago. That's where she's doing her education. That's where she's doing her teaching job, her instructing job. But she's originally from this small community called Cascade Springs, located in the New England area, specifically around the Niagara Falls area. That's where her grandmother is still living and resides, and that's where her mother passed away from cancer. But Violet ended up moving away to Chicago because she had this traumatic experience in which she found her best friend's body. And here we go at the opening of the book, where Violet has received this phone call from her grandmother Daisy, who is urging Violet to come back to Cascade Springs under the impression that she is dying. Violet, of course, picks up her life pretty much to rush back to Cascade Springs, and that is where she finds out that her grandmother's actually just freaking fine. And I was like, oh, okay, so we're dealing with a liar here. All right, cool. All right, strike one. We got a liar on the premises. This old lady is over here lying. Why? But Violet, she stays in the town for a while, and she really has no choice because, number one, Violet's grandmother is operating the bookstore that's been in their family for a long time, for generations. It's this bookstore where a birch tree is growing out of the center. There's a spiral staircase, iron spiral staircase that goes into the loft area where the children's section is. There's a crow that seems to fly around unhinged, and I don't know where his poop go, but I guess it falls on the spine of some of these books. I'd be thinking about stuff like that. But the crow is in there as well. And, this bookstore has been a part of their family for generations, as I said. But that is probably what we discover is the key reason for Violet's grandmother urging or lying to her to get her back in town. But Violet ends up really connecting and staying in this town after she's introduced to her grandmother's boyfriend, a carriage driver named Benedict. And then it is here that subsequently Benedict is found backed up in Violet's grandmother's driveway, where he is clutching an Emily Dickinson book of poems, and Violet's grandmother's scarf is tied around his neck as Benedict has been strangled. That is the setup. Violet comes to town. Grandmother is fine. Grandmother boyfriends end up dead in their driveway. She can't leave her grandmother alone with this problem. Violet gets involved. With that being said, I'm going to make this quick by getting to the pros and the cons, or the things that I enjoyed and the things that I didn't so much. Beginning with the things that I didn't enjoy. Number one, it took me over 50 pages to find some confidence and trust in the character of Violet. I say that because in the first 50 pages, while though she is a college professor with some big glowing propositions ahead of her, she read like an adolescent to me. The overall tone, as it was told in the first person, was very... Let me explain what happened, where my troubles lie. Grandma Daisy's boyfriend Benedict was murdered, the body found in her driveway. The police get involved, and then the town mayor was getting involved as well. And the town mayor is actually one of Violet's ex-boyfriends. Go figure. Here we go with this, right? But Violet's grandmother, as she's getting arrested, she asks Violet to go to Benedict's house to retrieve his cat, and then go open up the shop in Violet's grandmother's place. And she proceeds to retrieve his cat, Emerson. And then that's when another detective, who is so enthusiastically described as a Native American with syrup colored eyes, which switched from syrup to I think like hazel and brown and all these different other vivid words, he ends up coming in and scaring Violet in more or less terms, and that is when he expressed to her that Benedict has been murdered, right? You would think that Violet, the character who discovered the body of Benedict, that there would be no reason to undress this any further than yes, he has been murdered. You would think that that would be a clue enough, seeing that she discovered his body and he was strangled with a scarf. No, she proceeds to ask this detective, was it really a murder? And then she further expressed, well, I guess it would have been murdered because he would not have been able to strangle himself with that scarf. It's like, girl, what are you doing? Why? You read all these literature books and you couldn't comprehend that one simple piece of murder. You saw him, you discovered the body. Why is this even one? What was the connection between you thinking that he strangled himself and set himself up and all that whole setup, the carriage in the driveway with the horse attached, with the scarf around his neck, with him cutting the Emily Dickinson book? You think he sat up here and did all this for what? But she asked her, was it really murder? No, it wasn't murder. He did it himself. Another example of why I didn't really attach myself too fondly to the voice of Violet was that once she gathered the cat and she was about to leave out of Benedict's house to take the cat to the shop, as I said, to open up the shop for her grandmother, Violet pedaled to Benedict's house on a bicycle with a basket attached to it. So here she is leaving the house with the cat in her arms, and she looks at the bike and she expresses to herself or to the cat, I don't know exactly how I'm going to transport you to the shop. And so the cat jumps out of her arms and jumps clear into the basket attached to the bicycle. And you know what Violet says? She says, oh, you've got to be kidding me. I was like, Violet, what is wrong with you, girl? You would think that the cat plus the basket on the bike will make the transition to the bookstore profitable. We'll use the word profitable in terms of brain cells. But for whatever reason, Violet didn't make that connection. She didn't compute that. She actually had to stand there and wonder, how was she going to transport this cat to the bookstore? The cat is smarter than the main protagonist. That's my point. But I want to say that after those 50 pages, things kind of went smoothly. I suppose I adjusted to the character of Violet. I don't know if I really, she was just like really a lot of the main protagonist, cozy mystery characters, doing a lot of really odd, illogical things a lot. And one of the things that drove me insanely crazy was the fact that she was stuck in this love triangle between the mayor of the town, which of course was one of her ex-boyfriends or friends, and the new dashingly handsome Native American police detective, to the point where they surprised her at every corner and turn. There were constant scenes in which someone said something behind Violet and she jumped back and turned and looked, and there is the Native American officer. Someone said something behind Violet and tapped her on the shoulder, and she turned back and looked, and there was the mayor of the town. It happened multiple times. We get it. You're trying to build a love triangle. Good job trying way too hard to build this love triangle. It's one of those books, one of those cozies where, like I said, there's too much emphasis and focus on the silliness of the main protagonist and how there's always this guy who has to come about in some form of fashion to straighten out the wrinkles in her behavior, if you will. But see, the thing about that is he's either really has this mildly pompous air to him, or commanding or controlling air to him, or he's either that, or he's one of those ones that are so struck by the main protagonist that he's just kind of so soft you really can't even respect. But yeah, that was yeah, I was just like, I was kind of over that part, like the love triangle thing. It's just like, here we go, So another con is that I thought that the ending was rushed. I just didn't think the ending was too great. It was a stretch, but I will say the build up to the mystery was actually pretty decent, or some of the avenues in which the author went through, like one being talking about the Underground Railroad in that particular area of New England, her going into the Native American myths and legends and history. She went into like trafficking between America and Canada, about that lane of, America and Niagara Falls and up north and stuff. So those were really interesting, her plugging those things in. And the atmosphere of this community, this Cascade Springs community, I enjoyed. It had like this both sunshiny and dewiness to it that I feel like was pretty well drawn out. So that was nice as well. But I think one of the biggest things that is really kept me or wanted me to keep reading this book is actually the magical bookshop. I like the fact that the author puts a little bit of history behind it in terms of how the area, the water in the area, as it ties to Native American myths and lore, has this certain magical property to it, and it's that water, that mineral water that they use to water the tree that's growing up in the middle of the bookstore is how the magical property started to blossom within the bookstore, where one of the biggest things is that the books fly off their shelves into the owner's hands, buy me, here we go, right here. So that was pretty neat as well. But another troubling thing I had with that is that Violet's grandmother Daisy had to explain this to Violet, and it's crazy to me because Violet's mother ran the bookshop until her death, and then Violet's grandmother picked up. This bookshop has been in their family for years, and yet for whatever reason nobody ever told this girl. It's like, okay. And it's even more frustrating when the apartment or adjacent or above the bookstore to the side, it was somewhere in that area, close connection, they at least shared a wall. Violet and her mother lived in that apartment, so I just never, I wasn't, it was just enough in this book to keep my interest with the magical element. It was just enough. It's very hard for me to explain, but like I said, I'm very forgiving, so I will see if I want to read the next one. I just, I need some more, I need to be able to believe in the character of Violet. I really do. I need to be able to believe in her. That's my struggle. I think that's my struggle.